as I get a little closer so people can see me. This is weird. Right.
Nice. Well, thanks for being here today. Those of y'all that are, we're going to have a really exciting presentation by Dave Conte on piano maintenance. So I know I'm looking forward to hearing all the wisdom. We've been chatting a little bit beforehand, and hope everybody finds this really informative and helpful. So take it away. Thank you.
My name is Dave Conte. I'm the piano technician in residence at the University of Tennessee. I also operate a private business, Rocky Top Piano, right here in Knoxville. I do rebuilding of pianos and anything that doesn't involve refinishing. So I've got a few handouts. Let's start with this. Maybe I should have started with this first. And we'll have this available to anybody that can't be here in person later. But I couldn't find the file to upload to the computer here, so we were not be able to display it. So the purpose of my lecture today is caring for your piano. I'll talk a little bit about acoustics, but mostly as the piano relates to producing sound. This handout, it really talks about the care of your piano, how humidity humidity factors impact the way your piano behaves and how to care for it. Has anybody heard about anybody heard the term soundboard cracks? Mm-hmm. Everybody has, right? Well, the reason those happen is, I think most of my lecture is going to be about relative humidity today. Relative humidity affects the dimension of the wood and how it behaves when it absorbs or lets off moisture. When it's like a sponge, when it absorbs moisture, it swells. So if your piano's frequently tuned and it's pretty close to pitch in general, you'll notice that it goes up in pitch during the summer. Unless you have pretty well-controlled humidity in the location where the piano is, and goes flat in the winter. That's because humidity drops to maybe 20% in the winter, or even lower here in Tennessee. In the summer, we have humidity 75, 80%, sometimes 90%. So I see in locations that don't have humidity control, or pianos that don't have humidity control attached to them, or installed on them, the pitch will rise maybe 25 or 30 cents, and in the summer months when it's humid, and drop the equal amount, 25. I've seen actually up to about 40 cent drop in the winter. Now consider this: a 40 cent drop is almost half of a half tone. So a half tone is 100 cents. Think of it as a dollar, right? 100 cents between B and C, or between A and A sharp. One half step is 100 cents. So 40 cents is almost half of a half tone. So it's quite noticeable. And the piano, it'll be almost impossible to play in that condition. And it doesn't change evenly. Usually, the bass is fairly stable. There's a lot more mass in the strings, so they're not as influenced by the movement of the soundboard. And that's what changes pitch. When the soundboard takes on moisture, it swells. And as you're probably aware, the soundboard is not really a parabola, but it has a crown like a road surface, So on the road, they put a crown in the middle so the water will run off the sides. Piano soundboard is designed to be the same. It's like the like a doorway, like the vaulted arch in a doorway, so that it has strength to compensate for all the downward pressure of the strings. The strings have 35 to 40,000 pounds in each piano. The strings inhibit 35 to 40,000 pounds of tension across the plate and the soundboard. So that's 17 to 20 tons of pull. The downward force, that's from front to back. The downward force across the bridges, and there is a slight angle across the bridges, just like with a violin or a cello, a guitar, strung instruments, have a little bit of angle as the strings go over at the bridge. Same with the piano, not quite as acute, but that means that's there so that the strings can push down on the soundboard to help transduce the sound from the strings into the soundboard and make it vibrate. So that downward force is called downbearing. And the downbearing can be 700 to 1,000 pounds on a piano across the bridge, across both bridges. Getting back to the bass area, those strings are much more massive and they're not as influenced by the movement of the soundboard. But right where the bass stops and the tenor strings take over, that's where the most movement always is. I've seen that if a piano's moving 20 cents overall, it might be 50 cents or 60 cents across that break. It'll catch up eventually before it gets into the fourth or fifth octave. But usually in second and third octave, it's disproportionately out of tune. So I talked about this in my handout. We talked about, I mentioned soundboard cracks. So the piano's going to go sharp, as I said, in summer when there's more humidity. It's going to go flat in winter. But there's other things that are happening. Everything in the piano that's made of wood is also moving. So there's stresses in the cabinet, in the pin block, in the key bed. I don't know if you've noticed when you're playing, the difference between humid conditions and dry conditions, there is a difference in touch. The way that the action responds, it's not only in the action parts moving themselves, it's also that the key frame is maybe swelling and contracting. The key bed itself is moving. So humidity has a profound effect on everything, not just the pitch, but that's where it's most noticeable. Older Steinways that were made in the 30s and 20s and 30s and early 40s have a tendency for their action parts to stick because there was what's known as verdigris. Verdigris is Latin, means green grit, right? You know, copper makes copper oxide, which is a green. That's what covers the Statue of Liberty. That's why it's green. And that contaminates the center pins. Is more often the hammer the hammer pinning, which, you know, when it gets really tight, the hammers will go up and not come back down on old Steinways. This is a very well-known problem. It's because they used mutton tallow, which actually accelerated the catalyst, acted as a catalyst between not mutton tallow, they used lanolin in the cloth that they pinned the action centers with, and it reacted with the copper in the center pins. Copper, the pins were a copper alloy, so they would create all this grit, and that grit would get into the hammer centers, and the cloth of the hammer centers, and the hammers would go up. Even if they came down, it was very hard to play. the touch radius would almost double if you could move it at all. So, but humidity can, and it's worse. This is why I was talking about this. It's worse when it's humid. You can lubricate a piano in that condition. It's not permanent, it may help for a couple of weeks. But when it's humid, even if that action is still moving reasonably well, it will bind up when it gets humid because that cloth is swelling and compressing the pins. In the dry months, as I said, you can hear the pitch drop. This is also when you'll see cracks start to appear in the soundboard because now it's lost moisture. The moisture in a wood component is called equilibrium moisture content, EMC. As technicians, we talk about this a lot. I'm also a rebuilder. I do design work on piano bellies, bridges, soundboards, all of that, rib system. So I'm acutely aware of equilibrium moisture content, EMC, and I know how it does to piano, what it does to pianos. But even the framework, the bracing underneath the piano, the rim itself, the key bed, as I said, the pin block, when it shrinks, not only will the pins become loose, but it may create gaps between the plate, which holds it in place, all the screws around that hold the plate in place, to secure it in place, will probably become loose. It's a little bit of a risk to try to tighten them when the humidity is very low, because then when the humidity comes up, it could cause the opposite problems. But even the plate itself will move, the pin block will move away from the plate and create a gap, which means if you're tuning the piano, now the pin block's moving, so it's becoming unstable. In summer months, when the humidity is really high, and I even see this on newer pianos, but mostly on 20, 30-year-old pianos, you'll see ridges appear along the rain lines of the soundboard. If you look closely, you can say, well, I see a little bit of a ridge there. It's a little bump along, kind of like a mountain range. What's happening is exactly what happens with a mountain range. The cells of the wood are taking up the moisture, and now they're starting to press against each other and raising a ridge. Now those cells of the wood will not go back to where they were. They will not recover 100%. So it crushes the cells a little bit. And over time, over several seasonal changes, that compressing and retraction of the wood cells will start to create a space between the cells. And then over time, that space will become a crack. Soundboard cracks are almost always the opposite effect of ridges. So I was in, oh, here you go, Faye. Give our other people handouts. I'm going to talk about this a little bit. You can follow along if you can find what I'm talking about. A few years ago, when I was still in Texas, oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I moved here from Texas, and Texas, north central Texas is about the same as it is here in Tennessee. Pretty humid in the summer, pretty dry in the winter. I see about the same humidity range. But in West Texas, up around Amarillo and Midland area, where they have dry all year round, it's a different story. You would think, well, that's better because humidity is not really changing. But wood needs to have some moisture content. When I'm putting new soundboard panels in a piano, I have to dry them out. I have a hot box, and I want to get the wood down to about 4 to 5% equilibrium moisture content, EMC, before I put it in the piano, for two reasons. Because I want it as dry as possible so that it won't dry out any further. But more importantly, if I get the wood dry, as I said earlier, the soundboard is crowned, and some of that crown comes from compression in the case. The case shouldn't be moving. The soundboard, if you put it in dry, will take up moisture, and the middle of it will rise because of the pressure that's put around the edges. So, as I said, I was in Texas a few years ago. Well, I used to live in Texas, and I was called to go up to Amarillo, to the College of Amarillo, Amarillo University. And they had a mixture of different brands of pianos. But regardless of the brand, probably 80% of the pianos there they were not new, and they've been living in those dry conditions for years or decades even. And almost every one of those pianos had soundboard cracks. I was hired by a company to go out and look at these because, of course, they wanted to sell them all new pianos. And they brought me out to inspect the pianos and document what I saw. I didn't have any relationship with this company. I went there as objective as I could be, but it was very obvious. The teachers knew it, that salesman knew it, and that's what he used to leverage in sales of new pianos. But I went there also, my motivation was maybe I get some work out of this too. I got paid to go there, but I also, like I said, I'm a rebuilder, so there might have been some work in there, but they just bought new pianos. But one of the outcomes of that, one of the benefits is that it convinced the university to install a humidity control system that would control the humidity in the building. I work at the University of Tennessee, and we have a new building. It's about 15 years old, maybe less, that has humidity control. We've got 6 air handlers that control the humidity in that building. I see very little of the effects of climate with those pianos, because ideally the pianos should be, they like to be just like humans. We're most comfortable when it's right about 45% humidity. You know, when it gets dry, your skin dries out, it gets itchy. The doors in your house react differently. They're loose in the winter. The windows are loose in the winter because the window frames have contracted, and a frame will expand when it's cold and contract when it's warm. Actually, tile people know this because the way that they can split small tiles up, they'll drill a hole in it and put a wooden dowel in the middle and wet the dowel. And when that dowel expands, it'll crack the tile. Very interesting. But, so same thing. Humidity will swell wood, and everything reacts to it. In your house, your floorboards may start to buckle when it's really humid. Your doors and windows may not open or close properly. They'll drag or bind. Same thing with a piano. So that's, I think, everything I want to talk about. Let me just check my hand out here and make sure I'm covering everything. Tuning is very important. That's the first step to maintain your piano. And I think I want to refer back to this because I really wanted to talk about care and maintenance of your piano and how to keep that on track. Tuning, of course, is the most important step. Not only does it keep your piano at the proper tension, and manufacturers design the pianos to be at a specific tension. I know you can tune it up to 441, 442, or tune them down to 438, or do historic tunings, but that's usually more temporary. manufacturers design pianos to be at whatever their design philosophy is. In Europe, I think it's creeping up towards 441, 442. In Asia, I think it's 442 and 443 now. But traditionally, the US has been 440 hertz, 440, and that's it. You can find it at A4. So everything's designed around that frequency, and the whole scale design is designed around that frequency. Everything in the piano is designed around that. As I said, the loads on the piano, the tensions on the piano are all designed around that. And so keeping your piano at that tension as constantly as possible will not eliminate, but forego a lot of potential problems in your piano that result from tension-related issues. It also gives the technician a chance to frequently see your piano or regularly see your piano so that he can detect problems while they're still small and not gets to the point that now it's going to be a very costly repair to overcome that, which you could have taken 2 minutes to fix otherwise if it's done on a regular basis. A word about tuning. In Tennessee, Texas was the same as I said. Unless you're doing, the audience today may be a little bit different, but typical piano owners play maybe a few hours a week, or maybe a few hours a month, depending on their degree of accomplishment and interest in playing the piano. They've got kids that need to take to soccer, with their activities. Generally, twice a year is good. It's not just because it's being played or not being played. It's also because you want to keep it kind of matched with the climate changes, which we have two here. We have dry tundra in the winter and sauna in the summer. It's hot and humid and dry and cold in the winter. And so you want to keep abreast of all those changes. So twice a year for most piano owners is good. If you're using your piano more frequently as teachers or students, you want to get it done maybe quarterly or more often, because it's not the playing itself that changes it, but as the soundboard is moving, if you've ever observed a piano technician tuning your piano, they do a lot of work on the keys to keep that string excited. And that's when it moves. If your piano isn't being played, it's not really going to move that much. Not because you're not beating the strings per se, but it's not causing vibrations where the strings are moving across the soundboard as it's rising or falling. So if the piano is not being played as the soundboard is rising or falling, it will change in pitch. But if you're playing it during those periods, the action of the string will change it, will allow those strings to move across the bridges and bearing points with less resistance. Regulation of the piano, the action is also an important component of keeping your piano working properly, because as it gets further out of regulation, you'll notice that it's not reacting the way it used to as far as touch and control, but also you may not see it, you may feel it, but the parts are wearing out. Every time you cycle the keys, there's this microscopic amount of wear. And as the parts get further out of adjustment, that wear accelerates. They get further out of regulation, they have to do more work, and there's more wear at the moment of that work, each repetition. A lot of times I'll open up an upright piano and I'll see some green dust in the bottom because it's the back checks which stop the hammer that cause the hammers to go into check so they can make a fast repeat. Same thing happens in a grand, but you can't see this because there's a fall board in the way and everything. But even in grands, at the back of the keys, I will see tan powder from the back checks, and that's an indication that things aren't working as they should, that they're wearing out. And that's one of the first things to go is the hammers and the back checks. You can see from the strings, piano that needs some work, there are cuts in the strings. They can be filed off a couple of times to not just take away, but to reshape the hammers into what it the shape it originally was intended to be. And shape has a major impact on what you're hearing, tone. When the hammer's getting flattened out by the strings, the tone suffers immensely. For those of you that might go to students' houses, you might notice that piano, it doesn't play right, it sounds really harsh. Or you go to a venue that hasn't taken care of their piano. A church or, God bless them, they don't know any better, but the technician hasn't been telling them that they need maintenance. So it's just getting worse and worse. The hammers are getting beaten up, the regulation's getting out of adjustment, it's not working right, you're having to work harder. And, regardless how good you are, you can't get the tone or the response out of the piano that you should be. And we're all professionals. We should be able to get out of the piano what we were trained to do. I'm not a professional piano technician, but professional piano player. But even I can tell the differences between a piano that needs work and one that's really well cared for. And it's not just the touch, as I say. The parts wear out, and the worse the regulation gets, the faster the parts wear out, because they're called on to do more work. Voicing, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Regulation has some impact on voicing. Voicing is mostly in the hammers, but it's also in the strings. Strings have to be level, they have to be clean, they have to be properly seated on the bridges to give the best tone. Strings should be all in the same plane, not one higher, one lower, because then the hammer won't be hitting all three at the same moment in time. And that is critical. You can hear it, I can hear it. You can hear it too, but you don't know what you're hearing. But you hear buzzes and strange noises, and that a lot of times comes from not only the hammer itself, but the strings are not behaving. They're out of sync, they're out of phase, and it's all part of what you're hearing. Adjusting the tension of the hammer, which is what voicing is, hammer voicing is one remedy to that, but it's only going to be limited in its effectiveness if other things need to be addressed. Strings, as I said, need to be seated on the bridge. They need to be clean, and they need to be level so that the hammers hit each string at the same moment in time, and it's not setting up a phase. Care and placement of your piano. Who's got their piano near a heating vent? Come on, be honest, put up your hand. Near a fireplace, near a window, or a door close to the outside? Okay. You don't open those doors, so you're mitigating that a little bit. I know you've got a door to the back that you do open. But I know that you don't always have a choice on where the piano is. But this is something that should be taken into consideration when you're thinking about where should I put the piano.
In the olden days, back when we were buying pianos, you were told not to put it on an outside wall.
And that's true, yeah. And does anybody remember Oscar Kirkland?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he wrote a barbershop piece that said, you never put the piano on an outside wall. Don't you ever put it on the outside wall. It's still pretty true, but nowadays, modern houses are very well insulated, they're very well sealed. So it's not as important as it used to be, but I still do prescribe to that. Put it on an interior wall if you can. Keep it away from doors and windows. Keep it away from heating vents, in the ceiling, on the floor. In Texas, we didn't have floor registers. They were all the ceiling ducts. So that's good in the summer because cool air sinks. But it's not as helpful in the winter because they're already near the ceiling and hot air rises, so you didn't get the benefit of the heat. It was more expensive to heat the houses in Texas than it is to cool them. The opposite is here because everything's in the floor here. But you don't want it blowing on the piano. If you can't put the piano, keep it away from the heating vent. In the winter, they have the deflectors that will channel it across the floor, and that's actually more efficient anyway because, as I said, heat rises. And if the vent's just pointing at the ceiling, that's where the heat's going. So try to deflect it across the floor anyway. I think you'll notice your heating bills will go down, and your whole house will be happier. In New England, we had, and I think I've seen it here a few places too, in older buildings, steam heat. Right? Remember those radiators that were against the wall? They were hot water forced, and they were steam heat. And actually, that would add some humidity to the air because it's generating steam. So that, in a way, was helpful. But I think those who are actually, I'm not sure. I think the jury, as far as I'm concerned, is still out on that. But don't put the piano anywhere near those. Don't put it in, they have those long heater elements against the wall. Those were also forced hot water. We had those back in Connecticut where I grew up. They're a lot more efficient, but don't put the piano near those because you're asking for trouble. And you're asking for added expense in piano ownership. Remember that pianos are not only a financial investment, but an investment in the future both for the piano owner and the music student, which with proper care will even outlast your home. Okay, get this? It will outlast your car, and pianos are expected to outlast your house. Okay?
Wow.
People think, wow, it's a €100 piano, it must be valuable. There are things that have gone wrong with that piano, but can be fixed. I suppose this is also true of a house within limits. You might be able to address foundation problems if you have a slab house, but if you've got an old stone foundation, there's not much you can do. There's nothing you can do as much you can do about interior walls or ceilings or a roof without tearing the house apart. With pianos, you can replace the soundboard, pin block. You can take it down to the skeleton and rebuild a piano. I do a lot of that work. But it's a very difficult conversation when somebody calls me and says, I found this old piano, maybe it's free. And I know that maybe that's all their budget can support. They've got children taking lessons. But more often than not, the free piano is the most expensive piano because you're going to have to do so much work on that piano. If the person that's giving it away that's exactly what it's worth to them. And they may have already been told that it's going to cost so much, they think, well, I'll just give it away. It's especially painful when a church is donated a piano in such a circumstance. And I think a lot of times the church can't refuse that donation, even if they want to, because of who might be giving it, the legacy it comes from. So that's a very difficult conversation. I had that come up recently. I've had that come up many times in the past. I've had to tell a church they had to get rid of the piano that was just donated from a very influential patron, because that piano was riddled with rodent infestation. And they just said, well, we're gonna give you the piano. Now, the people that donated that piano, I'm sorry, I'm gonna get on my soapbox a little bit here. The people that were donating that piano, a lot of times are motivated only by the tax benefit of that. They think, I'll give this piano away, it's not worth anything, but I can take $500 off my taxes. So I have a real problem with that, morally and ethically, but that's not really a conversation that I can have to the recipient of that donation. And I can't tell the donor that either, because, then it starts to get into areas of litigation where it might be libel or slander. So, my hands are pretty much tied when I really want to help the client, but I can't. Enough of that. I've got a couple more handouts for you. I've been having a discussion online with some other college and university techs about the effects of relative humidity. I'm not going to discuss this. I'm sorry?
I could pass them out for you.
Okay. I'll tell you what. I'll give you some of these, and you can pass them out to this side of the room. This side of the class.
That's
And
an
I will-
idea. Okay.
Pass those out to those. And I found this. You can read that at your leisure. I'm not going to read from that right now. But it's an interesting discussion among piano technicians about the effects of humidity. And what we all experience, it's piano technicians in general, not just college and university techs, but that's what group this came from. If anyone has studied acoustics or behavior of strings, you know that the string divides infinitely. The entire length will vibrate as one body, but then it subdivides in half, and that's an octave. So actually, let me see if I can get this to behave for me the way I want, and I can actually demonstrate a little bit of this. Has anyone done or seen any prepared piano work done? Okay. John Cage is a well-known composer that does this, but he introduces a lot of foreign objects into the piano, and I don't really have. I don't think that's a really good thing to do. Let's see if I can find it. I didn't tune this piano. They're going to be using it in Bill Jones' defense. They're going to be using this for an event soon, so he's got it scheduled to be tuned, but wasn't tuned for days. Perfect pitch here? Do you? Okay. That means you can name the note, but you can only tell if it's within a certain range what the note is.
but it's really weird because I can tell what it is if I hear something played on piano. If it's a string, I can tell. If it's a wind instrument, I get confused.
I think the reason is because of what I'm about to
Yep.
demonstrate.
Because the overtones. Yeah, overtones,
Oh, really?
Hear those other tones, the overtones? I'm trying to find a clean one further up here so I can get. That's an octave, all right? So this string is dividing in half again. And then it's dividing in half again. That's the next division. That's in half and in half, and in third, and in sixth, and it keeps subdividing until, I don't think it ever stops.
Yeah.
I guess there probably is a physical limit, but I don't know where it is. So we've got this. It's dividing half and half and half and half. Within those halves, it's dividing in other proportions. An interesting thing is, I found this. This is a conch shell. On the bottom is an X-ray of a conch shell. On the top is
Oh my goodness.
an illustration of how the string divides. There's half, there's a quarter, and all the divisions of the string are in there. And look at the conch shell.
That's
It's
crazy.
exactly the same. So Mother Nature knows this. I've got a few, do we have enough time? Do we have
Sure.
more time? Okay, I want to fire up my computer here and show you some of the things I was talking about earlier. And I don't have a screen, so we're going to have to come up here and take a look. Okay, let's get going. Oh, helps to turn on the mouse. Think about that statement. 40 years ago, how would you react if I said, we need to turn on the mouse?
Scared to death.
You think you lost your mind?
Well, that's beside the point, that's a given anyway. And I'm sorry for showing my best side to the people online. Let me turn this. So, I was involved in theater, and I know you should never turn your back to the audience. Let me just put this stuff right here, I've got all the pictures of it. Sorry, I am unprepared. Actually, you know what? I've got these on my, can you display these when
Sure. Yep, just let me know which one you want displayed.
okay? And actually, I don't think I've got them on here, but we can look at them on that, and then the people online can see it too, right? Okay, so, KMTA presentation. And we're gonna look at, well, I think we'll just look at these in order,
Okay.
okay? Let's move chairs out of the way. We can look at these, okay? There we go, that's good, right there. So this is, you guys can come over here and look at
Back
this.
vertebra.
This is a piano, this is a Model D Steinway, that the bridge was, this is a 15-year-old Model D Steinway.
Wow.
And the bridge is already coming apart. You can see that crack there? That's where that crack is there for a reason, because they have to orient the grain on a curved surface, so they have to make it in shorter pieces and join them along the length of the bridge. It can't be just one long piece. And on the top of the bridge, the bridge is constructed in such a way, it's got a root and then it's got a cap. So to repair this, you can take the cap, you can remove the cap and put a new one on, is what I did on this piano. So you can see here, it's split all around the bridge pin holes. I've removed the bridge pins in the strings. These are the remnants of where the string was cutting across the bridge. You can see right there, there's a crack in the bridge around the pins. Okay, let's go to the next picture. Okay, this is that same piano. Back it up. There we go. You see that bridge is actually lifting off the root. Now you can see how that bridge is made. So that root is made in a vertical, it's a laminated piece. So it's got probably 8 laminations across, so they can make it in a curve. So you can see that it's curved there. So they can make it in a curve. And then so the grain is oriented this way on the bridge, and on the cap it's oriented this way. It's the same piano, 15-year-old Steinway, Model D concert grand. And go to the next picture.
It's not one of ours.
Look at, you can see, it was.
It was.
Yes. This was in AMB 50.
And it was a place
Yeah.
that was.
So I could actually fit the blade of the putty knife in that
Wow.
crack.
No, A&B,
it's
over.
That's where the opera,
Yeah.
Fall Opera rehearses. Yeah.
I used to have my recitals in that room.
Next picture. Oh, this is what happens if you don't do good planning. What's wrong with this picture?
There's humidity on the sidewall here.
There's no window there. How would you get onto that balcony?
Oh, my.
Nice.
Oh, that's
Next
crazy.
picture.
It's like the door that goes nowhere.
This is a harpsichord. You can see how severe the lack of humidity is in this. We've got a couple of harpsichords at UT that when we have pretty good control, but sometimes the equipment goes down and I know it because I'll see cracks appear in the harpsichord before the pianos. Okay, next picture. Oh, that's my daughter. Oh, problem solved. Pesky student, problem solved. Sorry, that was Halloween last year.
Nice.
That's my kids. Next. This is Pupcake. That's her name, Pupcake, yeah. Okay, so this is where a soundboard is lifted away from the rim there. You can see there's a gap between, and there's actually a crack along there too. There's a crack and that soundboard has lifted away from the rim. And it's glued in place, so that glue has, the climate has been enough that the wood reacted and overcame that glue joint. Okay, let's go, next one. This was notching the bridge on that same piano that, the Steinway, that was putting a new bridge in it. Okay, next. And that was, after the bridge was repaired, putting the plate back in.
How much does that weigh?
The plates in this piano is about 450 pounds. It's cast iron. And that's mostly what's,
Humidity.
That's mostly what's withstanding the tension of the strings, is that cast iron plate. The piano itself is a frame and it contributes to it, but modern pianos, so the first pianos were very lightly built. Cristofori's first piano was, 2 strings. It didn't have a metal frame like this.
That's
This
my niece
is something that's
destroyed
been
piano.
something that's been evolved and implemented in the piano. Early pianos had tubular, maybe perimeter reinforcement, metal reinforcement, but it wasn't until the 1850s they started that full perimeter plates like this became standard features in pianos. Because now the tension's up on this piano, probably 42,000 pounds. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Sorry, I gotta go. I have another appointment.
Okay, you're welcome. Nice to meet you.
Come down.
Okay, let's go to the next picture. Okay, and there's a soundboard crack. This is what you'll see. This is on an upright piano, but if you remove the front panel, you could see this from the front. You could also, on an upright, go around the back and see the crack. You can, on a grand piano, if you care to, you can get under. And I do this very, as a matter of course, when I'm inspecting a piano. I don't just look at the top, because sometimes a crack is hidden under that plate. I can't see it. So I have to get underneath and see if there's anything, or any ribs that are lifting away or separating from the soundboard, okay? And this is a pretty extreme case, because you can see that's a very significant crack, and it's also pulling away from the rib here and the rim right there. And it's actually both sides of that crack is pulling away from the rim, but you can see it's pulling away from the rib right there, right there.
Now, that piano, it looks to me like it's not repairable. That's it, it's.
Actually, this is. I could repair that. So on a piano like this, I would re-glue the soundboard to the rim first. And, I've got to go drill a small hole and use a piece of wire on a jig and use it as a vise to clamp the two together. Glue it and clamp it together. And I would probably use, I would first need to clean out that old glue joint so the new glue would stick. And I would use that jig to pull everything together, glue it up, and then I would cut it, I would follow that crack, but make it larger so that I could put a wooden shim of the same material the soundboard's made from, spruce, in that crack, and then it would repair it. If the piano is really old and there's a lot of cracks in it, there's not much point in putting a lot of shims in it, because it's just, going to compromise the board too much. Okay, next one. And these are small cracks. This is more often what I see. Cracks are starting to develop. They're they're like hairline, but those will become, see, there are 2 here and there's 1 here.
Oh.
And it continues across the rib. So that crack doesn't stop at the rib, it goes all the way across.
Wow.
And they're probably a little bit upset about me getting too close to this microphone.
No, it's fine.
And here again, this, if you have a grand piano, this is what you'll see. There's a crack. It's very obvious. And you can see it runs all the way under the strings, under the bass strings. So again, depending on the age of the piano, the overall condition of the piano, I might just repair this. I would have to take the strings off and take the plate out and repair it, and then I restring the piano, and
Much work.
yeah,
Too much work.
yeah. But it's a lot cheaper than buying a new piano.
Yeah.
And if this is an heirloom, that's probably what you're gonna do. I do more work on pianos because people don't want to get rid of that piano than I do for just a matter of course. Next one, please. Is that the end?
I think it is.
Okay,
That's great.
that's it. Yeah.
You know, I was teaching a class at UT in my studio, and all of a sudden, we heard the biggest bang.
The plate failed.
No, it was a big crack came
In the plate of the soundboard,
in the sound.
you can't hear soundboard cracks. It was
Well,
something
I heard
else.
something.
Yeah,
It was the
something else.
biggest boom you've ever heard.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
What do you think
that's
it
a
was?
lot of times,
It wasn't the soundboard.
I think it
What
was the plate cracked. It was probably not.
Mm.
It wouldn't, tuning wouldn't stay put on that piano after that. So you saw me lifting, the picture of the plate being lifted out of the piano. And you know, you can see it looks like a harp, right? It's well, I wouldn't call it a harp. It's actually, technically it's known as a string frame. But most technicians just call it the plate, string plate. So, like I said, that's got to withstand all that tension. And they're really adequate to do that. They're more than adequate to do that. It's hard to make a plate fail. But as the piano gets older, cast iron has a tendency to crystallize and become more brittle. And on a really old piano, maybe casting wasn't, the technology wasn't as good as we've got today. And what really was kind of at its limit to begin with. Now, you know, a century later, it just can't stand it anymore. And maybe that piano wasn't designed to be at A440. I think in 1923, there was a consortium on universal pitch. And that's when A440 was adopted as universal pitch. Mostly because it's mathematical. I mean, it's very easy to divide that number. And A is the pitch that most orchestras tune to, right? Usually the oboe or the violin will sound the A, and the orchestra will tune to that. Where do they get that? Where do they tune the violin or the oboe to? That instrument will get the pitch off the piano. Doesn't that make sense? The whole orchestra can play with that piano. So where are you going to get the pitch from? You can't tune the piano in the middle of a concert, right? You can tune anything else in the orchestra except the piano. So the piano is the one instrument that won't move, that you can't do a quick tuning on.
But if there's no piano, they tune it to the oboe, right?
Or the violin, I've seen both. Yeah. And I think they just get the pitch from a pitch source,
Yes.
a tuning fork or a pitch, remember those pipes? But probably today, they probably just get off a frequency generator.
Yeah.
Can we ask questions?
Yes,
I have a question because I know somebody that's trying to sell a really small Steinway grand. It's really little.
it's Model S. That's the smallest one they made.
And I've had a student that's interested in it, but I don't know, I've heard people say that it's better to buy an upright because it has longer strings than to buy one of those little bitty grands.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of the Steinway smaller pianos, the S and M especially. Not because of the mechanical aspects, but because of the size. And they just can't, I've worked on Model M's and redesigned the soundboard where it was a respectable piano. But the ones that are new or have not been augmented have limitations.
So it's impossible to say. I don't know what to
To
tell these people.
answer your question, they're looking at the Steinway name, which I understand the quality, and the quality is going to be there more than if they bought a Colwyn Candler or some lower respected brand. Steinway does make good pianos. But I tend to agree with you. My advice to clients is always, it's better to buy a good quality upright than a cheap quality grand. Now Steinway is not a cheap quality grand, but it's really small. What is their objective? I think that's the conversation I would have with the client. If they're not worried about the tone or ear training or any of the things that we pretty much live in, or, then that may be fine.
It's
They're
pretty, it's a pretty piano.
Yeah, they're just buying the name and the appearance of the piano, right?
I would say the touch is important too. Like you get you get a different touch on an upright compared to a grand because of the escapement action.
Again, I would say, even considering that, it's better to buy a good quality upright than a cheap quality grand, because the touch won't be on it there on the cheap quality grand. I don't know if anybody's seen the old Kimball La Petite pianos. They were made for the economy market. And they are not bottom of the barrel, but close. I've seen some real bottom of the barrel pianos. There really weren't many made in the US, but there are lots of made in Asia and in Eastern Europe. I can't say names because I don't want to say anything publicly, but
even in the case of that Steinway S or Steinway M, wouldn't the action and maybe other than like wouldn't the action still be like a higher quality action than you'd get in a...
It would be higher quality, but remember, smaller pianos, smaller parts. The lengths of the keys.
The key length would be less.
All of this starts coming into the realm of physics. So the longer the keys, for the most part, the better the touch, because you have more mechanical leverage in longer keys than you do in short keys. Spinets are kind of an odd thing. I don't work on spinets anymore because it's physically difficult for me to do so. And I can't justify what a customer would pay my rates to work on that instrument. I'm expensive. So I generally refer those out. But actually the fact that the action drops off the backs of pianos and has a longer lifter on it actually tricks physics into thinking that key is longer than it actually is. But in general, bigger is better in every case in a piano. And bigger is better in a spinet too, because the spinets, there's smaller cases and the string lengths can't be. It's impossible to tune a spinet and get a really good tuning out of it. I don't care what people that market their businesses say, I can tune a spinet. It's really just not. You're not going to get a good result. You can tune it, but what will that tuning sound like? That's another reason I don't do them, because, by reputation, I am known to deliver a certain level of quality, and I can't do it on a spinet no matter how I try.
Couldn't it be argued that you actually can't tune a piano perfectly due to the Pythagorean comma? Like
Pianos can be tuned to equal temperament at the least out of tune that it can be. But every piano is always going to be slightly out of tune. That's what inharmonicity is all about. And inharmonicity is a big thing when it comes to piano tuning. The smaller the piano, the greater the inharmonicity. That's another reason. Smaller, well, that's not that small, but the Model S will be more difficult to get a good tuning on, because you're expecting a 4-foot string to do the same thing that an 8-foot string will do in a 9-foot piano. So it's, inharmonicity kind of clobbers a smaller piano, and I think that's the argument for not ever buying a smaller piano, even a Steinway.
I don't know what they're gonna do with this piano.
Wow. It's a conversation they can have. It's not your problem.
No, it isn't.
I have a question.
Yes.
You've talked a lot about humidity, but not a lot about temperature. So all of this is humidity, changes in humidity or not staying at 45% can cause problems in a piano. But what about the change in temperature?
Very good question. I'm glad you brought this up because I forgot to talk about it.
Okay.
Humidity is relative humidity. It's relative to the temperature and air pressure.
Okay.
So yes, and this is, I think, part of that handout in the discussion about relative humidity. Temperature, no, it's the other one page I gave you. Temperature also has a profound effect on pianos, but mostly as it relates to air temperature. In the winter, it's cold outside. The humidity, the amount of water in the air is less because the air is denser. Then we bring that air into our house, we run it across a furnace and dry it out even more. So it's 25% humidity outside, it's 18% when you bring it in the house. Probably a little bit more than that because if you start cooking, you're making spaghetti or something, you're introducing humidity into the house. Humidity is a very dynamic thing, just like temperature.
Okay.
Temperature does, if the humidity was constant and the temperature changed, and the humidity would stay constant with the temperature change, which is not really possible, but if we could isolate those two, temperature would have an impact on it, but humidity, it would be faster than humidity. It takes time for the wood components to absorb the humidity and the ENC to change, and the pressure on the soundboard to change, the pressure on the strings from the soundboard to change. But humidity and temperature changes we see immediately. Think about in the winter, telephone wires will sag in summer, right? When it gets colder, they rise because there's more tension between them. They contract, right? And that creates tension. When I'm tuning a piano, I'm contracting, pulling up the tension. That's contracting or elongating the wire, but it's raising the tension because of the proportion of the tension to the diameter and mass of the string.
Okay.
Sorry, it gets
No, very technical.
Over my head. Over my head.
Yeah, over mine too.
Most things are over my head.
Specifically, well, my situation, I have just moved into another house and it's a split level. And my piano studio is downstairs. And they have this open area like a den or something with a fireplace. And then right here is a big door to the patio, okay? But there's a bedroom right here and it's half underground. And I didn't want to put the piano by the fireplace or the big open door, patio door. So I put it in that little bedroom right there. So that's my teaching space. It is half underground and it's always colder down there than it is upstairs. So I brought in a space heater. I have bought a dehumidifier, but I don't think I need it in the winter.
No,
Probably not. So I
you need a humidifier in the winter.
humidifier,
Yeah.
okay. So what would you recommend? Because I've got two high windows right
I've
there.
got the same house.
Oh, you do? You have my house. Okay, what do you do if you have your piano down there in that little bedroom?
Well, you put it on, there's a wall between the den space down there and that bedroom space, right?
Mhm.
So you put it on that partition between those two.
Well, it's a grand piano, so it sits in
Okay.
the middle of the room.
Okay,
You could, I've been there.
Yeah?
You could move a little bit closer to that wall on the left, or a little bit further away from
So
the
what I would
It's kind of
do,
sitting in the middle now.
you need to
yeah.
open the lid. So if you don't want it in the middle of the room, I mean,
I do
it
want.
is what it is.
It's a small room.
It is what it is, so just, I mean, try to keep the space controlled the best you can.
How?
I mean, you're using a space heater, right?
I am, and that's one thing that worries me,
Yeah.
because I don't
It
want
will
the
be
heat.
drying out, so you need to get a humidifier, which you also might, I'm not a real big proponent of installing humidity control systems, but in a situation like yours or in a church, it really kind of makes sense.
Okay,
And you get a humidifier, you have to run that all the time, and it's cheaper than installing one of these systems. But over the long term, it's going to be more expensive because that takes a lot of resistance. And in electrical terms, running an appliance that takes a lot of resistance is very expensive. Anything that uses heat is a lot of resistance. That's what generates the heat. So you might consider having a humidity control system. The one that's called Damp Chaser,
Okay.
Piano Lifesaver.
damp chaser.
Didn't we used to have those at UT?
I put one on the AMB 50 piano because it had to have something in that space. It's an old building.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you mean the thing, the rod underneath the piano that?
Not just the rod, not just the heater, but you've got to have a water reservoir under there that will generate moisture in the dry months.
And you talked about that in here. Is that the one you're,
I briefly.
humidity control system?
I'll tell you what, my contact information is on this. Email me any questions you have.
Okay,
Don't have any cards with me. I don't really do cards very much anymore because my contact information, if I'm doing a printed media, is always on my printed media. My contact information is on the last page of that 3-page
oh,
handout.
good, okay, oh, yes, I see.
And he's a wonderful tuner, so hire him.
Thank you, Faye. I take care of Faye's piano.
Oh.
Okay.
If you have any
Thank
questions,
I appreciate that.
I'll be happy to help.
There you go.
You know, I consider this a public service. Yes.
Can I quickly ask, if, before we get the damp chaser installed, what kind of humidifier would you recommend?
Go on Google and see what's available. I would recommend a humidifier that also does dehumidification. So you don't have to get two appliances. They're a little more expensive, but it's probably cheaper than buying two separate appliances. So you want a humidifier and a dehumidifier. Just having one means you're only gonna treat half the cost and you may make it worse.
You know, we probably need to wrap it up. I need to talk about something.
Oh, sure.
Is that okay? Anybody else?
Well, he told me you weren't gonna have a business meeting today, so blame him.
Well, not before the meeting, not before the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, only after.
That's why I asked.
Well, I just think this is so great for us because we
Yep,
Thank you so
yep.
much.
We don't know what happens to our piano, and we don't know how to take care of our pianos, and he's a wonderful technician, and you know, I love to have a technician that plays the piano well, too. He was a piano major.
I don't play the piano well.
Hey,
I can play it a little bit, I can play for myself. I can play for my own compositions, but I'm not gonna sit in front of anybody and play it. A lot of times I have a client that says, oh, would you play something for me? I'm gonna decline because I can't play very well. And if somebody's watching me, I can't play at all.
Well, yeah, we all think that.
Well, thank you for a great presentation. Let's
So, thank you for having me.
Well, and I need to talk about the lunch